Hello friends, Nick Janae here from Student Life. Today I'm going to share a favorite recipe of mine, crepes. I grew up making crepes. My family's heritage is from Hungary, and we made a lot of crepes and stuffed them with all sorts of delicious things, sweet and savory. Crepes are a lot of fun to make, they're a lot of fun to eat, and I am excited to be able to share this with you. A couple things we need to have on hand. A mixing bowl is a definite must. A ladle is useful but not essential. A spatula is pretty darn essential, and a nice thin one works super well. And this you probably don't have, but if you do, good on you, because this is super useful for crepe making. This is the crepe squeegee. You're probably not going to have this, but you can make one out of 2 dowels. But we are going to use a method that doesn't even require the crepe squeegee, but I'll show you how to use this. Also, some paper towels are handy in this. As for pans, you can use a crepe pan if you have it, but what's really important is just something very flat, a flat frying pan with low, shallow sides. You could certainly make crepes in here too. They're just a little bit harder to dig out, but any sort of frying pan works. It just has to have a flat bottom. So that's what we have for our tools. You will need a source of heat, like a stove top. Okay, for actual ingredients, we'll get into the details and the ratios, and I'm sure they will appear somewhere in this screen for you. But the cool thing about this is that this is, you can actually do this as a local, place-based thing. You can get, the key ingredient to the kind of crepe I'm making uses buckwheat flour. And buckwheat actually is something that is grown right here in Maine. This is Bouchard Family Farms from, I think they are in Aroostook County, Fort Kent. So this is gluten-free and has been used for all sorts of interesting Maine-related treats, including, and Quebec-related treats like ploys, but they make really, really good crepes. You can get that at Hannaford. Some sort of canola oil works very well. You'll need some salt. You'll need some water. You'll need a small amount of milk. And you'll need eggs. This is gluten-free. Can you do this vegan? Yes, I think you could, but this recipe is not that. But I think there's all sorts of good resources on Google for and the internet for gluten-free crepes. I've made them before, they do work. But this works really well. And then, of course, crepes are nothing without the stuffing. Crepes are the vehicle, and so you can do the classic Nutella and banana to do sweet crepes. You can fill them with jam, my favorite. But you can also do savory crepes. So we're going to try here for dinner, we're going to do some asparagus with some prosciutto, or maybe asparagus with some goat cheese. Anything you want to put in the crepe, great. Go wild and try some interesting combinations. Crepes are a great vehicle. So that's what you need. Give me 2 seconds to prep things up, and we will be back in just a flash. All right, we are back. One tool that I forgot that we do need is a good whisk. You can also use a fork, but a whisk definitely helps get the buckwheat flour mixed in with the water and milk. So I would highly recommend a whisk. All right, really, really simple. We start with a 1.75 cups of the buckwheat flour, and we put that right into our mixing bowl. You take a teaspoon of salt and you throw that right in. And yes, absolutely, when I cook, I always measure everything out in advance. It's very cool, calm, and collected, just like this, every time I cook. And then we mix the dry ingredients like such. And then you put the wet ingredients in here. You put 2 eggs. And you put 1.25 cups of milk. And you put 1.25 cups of water. And you put 1 tablespoon of canola oil right in there. And then you mix it all together. And you mix, and you mix. And the one thing to note is that the batter will improve if you let it sit for, 15, 20 minutes before you use it. The The buckwheat flour will thicken a little bit. It'll just get the right texture for making crepes. The nice thing about this is that you can make this in advance and over the course of, 2, 3, 4 days, maybe pushing it. But you can just have this batter in a bowl jar in the fridge and just pour it in the morning onto a nice hot pan and make some crepes. I don't really recommend making a bunch of crepes in advance. They don't reheat pretty well. I just like keeping it in batter form. All right, so while that is thickening, we will. I'll show you how to get all your workstation set up for the actual crepe making, which is the best part. So I'll see you over there. All right, so we are ready to make crepes. The most important thing is this. There are 5 most important things. Number 1, you want to make sure that your pan is completely heated through. So if you're using cast iron, you want to give it a good 2-3 minutes. A good rule of thumb for cast iron is that once the handle is hot, then the entire pan has come up to temperature. You're going to have to play with this. If you're using a thinner pan, you're probably going to want a little bit lower temperature so you don't burn it. If it's a thicker pan, you can go a little bit higher. If you have the heat too high, the crepe will burn and you're not going to be able to spread it out quick enough. If it's too low, the crepe doesn't crisp and it just sort of doesn't turn out well. So I would suggest you put the heat at medium-low and then experiment. In my experience, the first crepe never works out. I think, it has to do with building up just the right kind of crust and the oil and whatever chemistry happens in there when cooking. So don't worry if the first one doesn't work. Don't worry if the second one doesn't work either. Crepes take a little bit of finesse, but we're gonna work through this here. So this has been heating. The handle is nice and warm. I'll show you where the paper towel comes in. If you want to come around here. You don't want to have too much oil on your pan. You just want a very thin layer. So, I don't know, just an amount, just a small little pour, just enough to coat it. And then take the paper towel. You can also use a slice of potato I've seen used when on a wilderness trip to do this. And wipe that in a nice thin layer. And then, gosh, I would say this is maybe a half cup, but again, this is something you're going to want to experiment with as well. So you want that batter mixed up. You want to make sure that it hasn't, the sediment hasn't formed where it's thick on the bottom and liquidy on top. You want to get it nice and mixed up, and then just give this a whirl. So first I'm going to show you the method with the crepe squeegee, and then we'll do one that just uses the, so you pour that out nice into the middle, and if you have the crepe squeegee, you do a gentle swirl around like this. And crepes don't take very long. You just want to wait until it clearly looks like there's no liquid. Some bubbles will form. But again, this is all about experimenting and figuring out what works well for the setup you have. Crepes do take a while to cook, and if you're going to cook for, if you're going to make a cut, this recipe probably makes 10 to 15 crepes depending on the size, and so what I like to do is have a heated cast iron on the side, pan, or just heat the oven and throw it in there on, on 200 degrees just to keep warm. So this looks about good. I'll take my spatula and get under there and do a flip, and there we are. That looks pretty good. Yeah, it's nice and it crisped up a little bit, browned up a little bit in the middle. The edges are fine there, so that's what a crepe looks like when it's that's a decent crepe. I'm pretty happy with that. So it doesn't take as long on the other side, obviously. If you've done pancakes, you'll know that. I'll let this sit for just a quick second, and that'll go in the warming pan like that. All right, if you don't have a crepe squeegee, what you want to do is make sure you have an oven mitt or something like this. Oven mitt is actually best, safety first. And you don't necessarily have to re-grease every time, re-oil every time, but play that by ear too. If it's starting to stick, you do. So I'm going to put a similar amount on there, same way, right into the middle. And then instead of using the squeegee, I just pick up the pan and swirl that around like such. There we are, and you just put that right on there. All right, and here we go. Last crepe just got fried up, and sauteing the asparagus and prosciutto to put in the crepes, and we got a nice stack right there, ready to go. So I'm going to attempt a selfie video here. I hope that was inspiring. Crepes are really fun. There's so much you can do with them. They're great for breakfast. They're great for lunch. They're great for dinner. If you have any questions, reach out. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Bon appetit.